We apologize for interrupting your doom scrolling. Now, for some positive leftist news.
Stay tuned until the end of the episode for an exciting offer from Means TV, your number one spot for worker-owned media.
The old world is dying. The new world is slow to appear, and in this chiaroscuro surge monsters. Antonio Gramsci. I would be lying to you if I said that I wasn't deeply, darkly afraid. And yet, doesn't the fire in the jack-o'-lantern's eye burn all the brighter when enrobed in this darkness? Dear viewer, I know that when I am feeling scared, I like to reach out for a warm hand to clasp tightly in mine. In that shared grasp, that embrace, I find the essential building block of all solidarity. After all, we are the specter that rattles the chains until they break. Let us rattle them together as we celebrate a few chilling tales of positive leftist news.
Finally, after 15 months of Palestinian resistance against Zionist genocide, a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel has been reached. Israel was not able to achieve any of its stated goals in Gaza with military force, those being the return of the prisoners and the total destruction of Hamas. In the end, the prisoners of war were only released by meeting Hamas's demand for a ceasefire. Israel's unofficial but abundantly clear goal to ethnically cleanse northern Gaza has also failed. Palestinians are now returning to their destroyed homes en masse to begin clearing the rubble and searching for loved ones. 2,000 Palestinian prisoners are set to be released in the first stage of the ceasefire, with most having been recently captured in Gaza while hiding with their families. Even analysts from within the genocidal Zionist state are calling this a victory for the resistance. Footage of very much alive and numerous Hamas fighters fully exposed Netanyahu's lies about having defeated the resistance to the Israeli public. With Israeli politicians openly calling to resume the genocide after the hostages are transferred, there's no telling what will happen after the first stage of the ceasefire. But, for now, Palestinians can breathe a sigh of relief as aid trucks flow into Gaza and the people can begin to rebuild. If Israel does not violate the ceasefire, the next stage in the Palestinian struggle, as stated by the resistance itself, is the struggle to rebuild and further economically isolate Israel. Israel will no doubt do whatever it takes to slow down and block reconstruction efforts. Supporters of Palestinian liberation the world over must demand that Palestinians be allowed to rebuild their homes and lives, to make Gaza hospitable for human life again, for an end to Israel's economic blockade, and ultimately for decolonization. Most importantly, Palestinians could not be broken, and now believe that liberation is achievable. They withstood the combined might of the collective West, who backed Israel with arms, weapons, and propaganda, only to stand tall and triumphant as a people. We must believe this too, with all of our hearts, and do whatever we can to help bring about a future without colonial domination. In a powerful display of international solidarity, 68% of members of the Swedish Dockworkers Union voted to block the handling of military shipments to and from Israel. Dockworkers are bravely stepping in where elected officials have failed to uphold human rights. The blockade is also a call to action for workers worldwide. The SDU has a long history of international solidarity, including being the first to refuse to handle cargo from Chile after the coup d'etat against Allende by Pinochet in the 1970s, and they were the first in Sweden to boycott South African cargo in solidarity with the anti-apartheid movement. Eric Helgesson, SDU's vice chair, said, "We're expecting a strong pushback from the Swedish government and other actors, but our experience tells us that if we hold the line, the backlash will pass. In the long run, it's not unions taking a stand to defend human rights that future generations will condemn. It's the indifference and profiteering from war that they will find impossible to justify. After a half-century of unjust incarceration, Leonard Peltier is finally going home. He was one of the longest-held political prisoners in the United States, incarcerated for fighting to protect his people. An elder Dakota and Ojibwe member of the American Indian movement, Peltier represented a powerful symbol for millions. Indigenous activists and allies viewed his imprisonment as collective punishment against generations of indigenous people who fought for liberation. Peltier is a survivor of the genocidal residential school system, which ripped him away from his family and homeland when he was just a child. President Biden granted executive clemency to Peltier in the last minutes of his presidency. However, Peltier was not pardoned, meaning he will fulfill the remainder of his life sentence in home confinement instead of full freedom. This win is therefore not Biden's, who had otherwise let him languish behind bars just as Republicans have, but for the people of the Oglala Lakota Ayote and the indigenous grassroots movements that kept the fight for his liberation alive all of these years. The Red Nation podcast wrote in a statement, letting him return home after 5 decades of torture is not a win that Biden or his party get to claim. If they want to take any sort of responsibility, then let them be responsible for upholding the system that put and kept him there. All the credits for this victory goes to those warriors who voted with their feet, the ones whose spirits are not content living solely within a ballot box and took direct action through multiple administrations. This is our people's victory. The Ivory Coast has become the latest African nation to expel French troops by January 2025, joining a growing list of African nations rejecting France's military presence. The decision marks a dramatic shift for one of France's closest allies in the region and signals a growing backlash against its colonial-era influence across West and Central Africa. From protests in the street to fiery political rhetoric, anti-French sentiment has reached unprecedented levels. Critics point to a legacy of colonial exploitation, post-independence meddling, and failed military interventions as reasons for the widespread anger. Over 200 French companies, including oil giant Total and uranium miner Orano, still operate in Africa, seen by many as symbols of continued resource extraction at the continent's expense. The move underscores a growing demand for sovereignty and self-determination in Africa. As one observer noted, these decisions represent a collective reckoning with colonial legacy and a bold step toward independence.
In a landmark victory for tenant power, residents of 1616 President Street in Brooklyn secured $250,000 in waived rent after a 4-year rent strike against slumlord Jason Korn. The tenants, led by organizer Vincia Barber, demanded critical repairs to address black mold, infestations, and other unlivable conditions in their 24-unit complex. "We have to understand we are stronger together," said Barber, reflecting on the tenants' collective fight. The court ruling, issued in December 2024, cited rent-impairing violations during Korn's ownership from January 2020 to May 2022. Korn, once named New York's worst landlord, oversaw thousands of building code violations across his properties. The victory is part of a growing wave of tenant organizing. Groups like the newly formed Tenant Union Federation are building power through rent strikes and collective action. "The rent is too damn high," said TUF co-founder Tara Ravir. "The question isn't whether tenants revolt. It's whether that revolt comes from desperation or power. We are organizing to ensure the latter." Barber sees hope in the movement. She said, "When you fight alone, the landlord eats you alive. Together, we win. Congratulations to the organizers." In more good news for the Cuban energy sector, China has delivered 70 tons of power generator parts to Cuba, aiming to restore its grid and advance the country's energy transition. This donation is part of China's emergency aid and is expected to benefit over 53,000 Cuban households. Cuba's energy crisis stems from the U.S.-imposed sanctions and blockade that hinder fuel imports and equipment maintenance. Blackouts have been affecting over 40% of the population daily, crippling economic activity and livelihoods. China's partnership with Cuba extends beyond emergency aid. Collaborative initiatives include photovoltaic park construction to boost renewable energy, with Cuba aiming to generate 25% of its electricity from renewables within 5 years. Sunlight is our most favorable resource, officials noted, emphasizing the shift away from fossil fuels. This solidarity between nations underscores the potential for South-South cooperation to successfully combat imperialist meddling and create space for alternative political economies to thrive. Australian bosses can now face up to 10 years in prison and fines of $1.6 million under new laws against deliberate wage theft that took effect on January 1st. Liable companies could be fined up to $8.25 million. The move aims to address years of scandals involving major employers like Woolworths, Qantas, and 7-Eleven. Until now, companies and their directors could only be charged using civil laws, which don't come with the threat of jail time. Now Fair Work will be able to go after them using criminal laws too. Fair Work may initially focus on egregious cases, like wage cashback schemes disproportionately targeting vulnerable migrant workers. Such schemes, infamously exposed during the 7-Eleven scandal, force employees to return portions of their pay. While we celebrate the move, it's important to understand that wage theft is inherent to the capitalist economic system. Workers are not paid the full value of their social labor, and wage stagnation since the 70s has helped facilitate soaring profits for the capitalist class, increasing inequity while making life increasingly difficult for all workers. But the bosses need us more than we need them. Down with all wage theft, and all power to the people. Thousands of farmers gathered in Haryana on January 4th to demand the repeal of the National Policy Framework on Agricultural Marketing, which hands Indian agriculture to corporate giants and threatens small farmers' livelihood. The rally, led by Samyukta Kisan Morcha, also renewed demands for legally guaranteed minimum support price, accusing Prime Minister Modi of abandoning promises made in 2021. The NPFAM is recognized as a tool for global finance, backed by the World Bank and IMF, to seize control of Indian agriculture. Farmers have stood firm against corporate encroachment before. From 2020 to 2021, they forced the Modi government to repeal 3 pro-corporate farm laws through sustained mass protests, including encircling Delhi for over a year. The farmers' movement remains a powerful challenge to the BJP's pro-corporate agenda, standing as a bulwark for millions of small producers and for food sovereignty in India. Leaders vowed to escalate protests, calling the fight bigger than the earlier victory against the 2020 farm laws. Joginder Singh Irguhan declared, "This battle is not just for MSP, but to save Indian agriculture itself." 5,000 nurses and doctors began an open-ended strike on January 10th, picketing all 8 Providence hospitals in Oregon. The action is the largest healthcare worker strike in state history and its first involving physicians. Workers are uniting in the fight for better staffing, wages, and benefits. While receiving support from the governor, the strike is ongoing. PLN will be following the strike as it develops. Solidarity with this historic strike. After dealing with ongoing issues around wages, work hours, and working conditions, undergraduate student workers at Clark University are unionizing with Teamsters Local 170. Students are united around increased hourly payment for all campus jobs, the removal of limits on hours students are able to work, and for campus jobs to be more accommodating towards those with student visas. Students with federal work-study jobs have struggled with being scheduled for enough hours to be paid the full amount offered to them through work-study. Groundskeeping assistant and facilities management Jack Keene said, "We see a union as the best path towards ensuring better working conditions and rights for us all and building solidarity among students. Indeed, the union makes us strong." In a historic decision, Lithuania's constitutional court ruled that the country's 2009 gay propaganda law violates constitutional protections for families, children, and human dignity. The law, which banned materials promoting non-heteronormative families, had silenced LGBTQ+ voices and led to self-censorship. The case gained attention when author Naringa Dongvide Makate's Amber Heart, featuring same-sex couples, was banned. The European Court of Human Rights ruling emphasized that family is gender-neutral and includes diverse relationships. It rejected the idea that shielding children from such information aids development, stating that it impedes their growth into mature, comprehensive personalities. The Lithuanian Gay League hailed the decision, noting the law's chilling effect on LGBTQ+ communities. Legal experts view the ruling as a key step towards broader LGBTQ+ rights in Eastern Europe. In a groundbreaking decision, the Montana Supreme Court has become the first state high court in the nation to uphold trans youth's access to gender-affirming care, rejecting the state's ban on such treatments. This historic ruling ensures that, no matter the outcome of future political shifts, gender-affirming care will remain protected in Montana. The case began when several trans teens, their families, and 2 medical providers filed a lawsuit after Montana passed a law banning gender-affirming care for trans youth, while allowing similar treatments for cisgender teens. The plaintiff argued that the law constituted illegal sex discrimination and violated parents' constitutional rights to make medical decisions for their children. The decision follows a September 2023 lower court injunction that blocked the law, highlighting its likely unconstitutionality and the serious harm it would cause to trans minors' mental and physical health. Barring access to gender-affirming care would negatively impact gender dysphoric minors, the judge said. The Montana Supreme Court's ruling cements trans medical care as a constitutional right within the state. This makes the state the first state Supreme Court to rule that trans medical care is protected, noted trans journalist Aaron Reed. Lambda legal counsel Kel Olson added, Montana's constitutional protections are stronger than federal ones. Transgender youth in Montana can sleep easier tonight knowing that they can continue to thrive. In more good news from the Montana Supreme Court, the court upheld a landmark climate decision, solidifying the constitutional right of residents to a clean environment and rejecting the state's push to prioritize fossil fuel interests. This decision marks a significant victory for the young climate activists aged 7 to 23 who challenged the state's policy of approving fossil fuel permits without considering their impact on greenhouse gas emissions. This ruling is a victory not just for us, but for every young person whose future is threatened by climate change, said lead plaintiff Ricky Held. The court's decision follows a 2022 district court ruling that declared the state's permitting process unconstitutional for ignoring climate impacts. Rejecting the state's argument that Montana's fossil fuel emissions are too small to matter on a global scale, the court delivered a powerful message. Greenhouse gas emissions from Montana's fossil fuel projects still contribute to climate change. Chief Justice Mike McGrath used a classic parental analogy in the majority opinion. If everyone else jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? Otherwise, the right to a clean and healthful environment is meaningless. The ruling forces Montana to carefully assess the environmental impact of all future fossil fuel permits, ensuring that the state upholds its constitutional responsibility to protect the environment. The case, filed in 2020, has been seen as a breakthrough in using the courts to address climate change, with Montana's constitution offering rare environmental protections. As young activists continue to fight for their futures, this ruling sets a powerful precedent. In a win for conservation, Italy's Po Delta, a UNESCO-protected biosphere reserve, has been saved from the devastating impact of offshore gas drilling. Environmental groups scored a landmark victory in late 2024, winning a court case that blocked the Teodorico gas platform project, which threatened the already fragile delta. The Po Delta, an ecologic treasure home to over 350 bird species and 1,000 plant species, has long faced the dual threats of climate change and human activity. Sinking land, saltwater intrusion, and shifting weather patterns are already wreaking havoc, threatening its biodiversity, agriculture, and fishing communities. Adding offshore drilling to the mix would have exacerbated the risk of flooding and ecosystem collapse. The court confirmed the government's failure to assess the project's environmental impact violated both EU and Italian nature laws, blocking the company's permit. Client Earth lawyer Francesco Melletto said, approving this project sacrificed wildlife for oil and gas. It was a lesson in how not to fight climate change and a clear breach of EU and Italian laws.
But this crucial win reverses that.
If you have good news from the current month, please send your stories to mexi@protonmail.com. And as mentioned, we have a special offer for viewers from Means TV, which is a worker-owned cooperative dedicated to supporting and producing anti-capitalist media. The streaming service hosts us along with other rad creators like Second Thought and Luna Oy, full-length documentaries like Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, and Means original content like Means Morning News, Seriously Wrong's Papa and Boy, and much more. We're happy to announce that we are now able to offer viewers a discount on joining Means TV. If you sign up using our link and code, which is MEXI, you'll get 20% off your first month, which comes to $7.99. Or you could go with the annual option and get 20% off the entire year. Signing up using our code not only directly contributes to the financial sustainability of the Means Cooperative Media Project, but it's also a great way to support our channel. So if you have the means, consider taking us up on this discount. The link and code are in the description box below. Thank you to Javi for the Positive News Jams. Thank you to Cosmo for the Positive News background. Thank you to Catherine and me for scriptwriting and production. Thank you to Horror Vanguard for hosting and to Opting Out for editing. If you'd like to support the show, please go to patreon.com/positiveleftistnews, where you can give us a one-time tip. The link is in the description box below.